Okay, so logic structures. What are they, and why is it that everyone who seems to use them achieves their goals so reliably? Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. So we all have a current situation, and in that current situation, as much as we love certain parts of it, there are some things that we're just not happy with. And off in the distance, we can see a future reality that is much more desirable, right? Whether that is more money, better relationships, or some other thing. Now, in order to get there, we need to go on a bit of a journey. We've got to go on a path to get there. And throughout this path, many different obstacles and problems can arise. And so we can get stuck somewhere on this path. But what is quite interesting is that there are really only three obstacles, fundamental obstacles, that people can have, right? The first one is just not knowing what the problem is. You're just going around in circles and you have no awareness of what the problem actually is. The second obstacle is that you might know what the problem is, but you have no effective solution for it. Or you may have tried a whole lot of solutions before, but none of them seem to work. You're out of ideas, right? You've got full awareness of the problem, but there's no effective solution. And thirdly, you might have an effective solution, but you can't implement it. You might not have the skills or capabilities, or maybe you don't have the capital or the resources to do it. So the only solutions that are effective, you can't afford to do, or you don't have the time to do, or whatever it is. Okay. Now, assuming you know exactly what the problem is, you have an effective solution for that problem, and you can implement that effective solution, you're off on your way to achieving your goal, to getting into your desired reality. Okay, so these are really the three main obstacles that we want to focus on if we want to improve our lives. Now, how is it that people deal with these obstacles when they encounter them? Well, firstly, we have inner dialogue. We might just think in our own heads about our situation and how we might overcome it. Secondly, there is talking to others and listening to what they have to say, getting an outside perspective and learning from other people's insights. And thirdly, we might just write things down. We might take notes and map out what we currently understand about our situation and try and think things through that way. Now, don't get me wrong here. Thinking is very good, okay? Talking to other people, very good. Writing things down, great, okay? However, these approaches are not without their downsides. When it comes to thinking, right, there are estimates that up to 90% of our own thoughts are the same thoughts we had the day before, right? And because these thoughts are so habitual, people tend to be less critical of them, right? And they really challenge them unless they are expressed outwardly, right? And so when you're thinking about problems in your head, you usually don't challenge your limiting beliefs or maybe false assumptions that you're making about the situation. Another issue with inner dialogue is that it tends to be quite unstructured and quite volatile. I mean, the mind can think about the situation in a suboptimal sequence or order, right? Or even unrelated thoughts can pop in and just derail your train of thought. So even if you do come up with a good solution or idea, you may forget it. And so that's a bit of a problem. Now, when it comes to verbal communication, I shouldn't really have to explain the downsides to you. I mean, have you ever been misunderstood before? Or has someone ever misunderstood you before? That's practically everybody. Now, we do understand what other people say a lot of the time, and we can communicate clearly through verbal communication, of course, but every now and then we might make assumptions about what the other person already knows, which causes us to omit certain key pieces of information, or we might say something that we believe is clear, but is actually open to multiple interpretations, which could lead someone to misunderstanding us. And this can cause a whole wide range of issues, from people unnecessarily taking offense to something to people going off and doing the wrong thing. And depending on the situation, it could be quite severe consequences, depending on the topics and what's happening. And at the very least, it is frustrating. And then there's text. While text is visual and helps people hold and recall a greater amount of information at once, fully communicating a situation can lead to text-heavy explanations and be impractical for presentations and meetings. While text is suitable for isolated reading, it falls short in settings where synchronous communication is required. When a lot of information is condensed into one area, people feel overwhelmed and avoid reading the text, preferring to revert back to verbal communication. The linear nature of text can also obscure the relationships between different points made about the situation. It is these 2 points combined that sometimes make text impractical for thinking through or communicating and solving these 3 roadblocks. Okay, so overall it seems like we do not have enough structure for thinking and communicating clearly. However, if we create diagrams that represent our problems, then we catch errors in thinking and communicating because the clear structure makes errors in thinking obvious. To add to that, if we present our problems and solutions to others as diagrams, and diagrams force us to be clear and concise, then we process information faster and more effectively. So these diagrams you are seeing right now are known as logic structures. They involve a cause and an effect and a reason why that cause leads to that effect, or an assumption. Now we can look at a quick example of someone who might be trying to start their own business and they're struggling with it. If they are to use logic structures to solve their problem, it might look like this. If I try to start my own business, then it will be too much work and I will burn out because I must start a business on my own. Now, when we actually stop to look at this reason, to look at this assumption, we can see that it's not true. You do not have to start a business on your own. This assumption is invalid, and therefore it opens up many more possibilities on how they actually might start up a business, perhaps in a team, right? Or with contractors or whatever else. Now, I understand that logic structures can seem a little bit simple, and for a lot of people, they can actually get the sense that, this is above them, that they are perhaps good at critical thinking and don't need to rely on these structures. However, it's important to remember that we can all think critically until the situation is critical. And that's when we start to make errors in judgment. If you've ever seen a horror movie where there's a monster and there's someone trying to do something as simple as turning a key on a door or a car, and their hand is shaking or they drop the key, they can't quite do this very, very simple thing, right? And when we face problems, right, especially when we're under time pressure or when it's very urgent, we start to make these errors in judgment. And by practicing these structures, we can get better at doing these very, very simple things in more complex environments where things become more difficult. Okay, so with logic structures, we can become aware of our assumptions and we can challenge them, right? And when you're thinking in your head, just by yourself, you just have that inner dialogue, you're not critical of your own thoughts. But these logic structures almost allow your brain to look at itself, and assess how good these thoughts actually are. You can actually take a step back and think, is everything that I'm thinking about the situation true, or is there actually a way forward that I'm not seeing? And so it really helps to prevent a lot of the downsides of inner dialogue. We can also use these logic structures to navigate conversations without a loss of understanding. By clearly mapping things out and adding in our assumptions, we can talk to others using these logic structures as a communication aid and make sure that everything is clear and that no stones are left unturned so that there is no misunderstandings in the conversation. And finally, we can use these logic structures to just think and communicate faster and with less mental strain. We just save a lot of time and energy in thinking and working things out. And I can compare it to a bike that allows us to travel a much further distance with less effort, right? And these logic structures are the exact same, right? They help us to communicate more efficiently and with less mental strain. And of course, when it comes to presenting, we can be a lot more concise with them. Okay, so to answer the question, what are logic structures? Logic structures are a thinking and communication aid, right? We can map out these diagrams to assist with our inner dialogue, right? We can present these diagrams or construct these diagrams with others when talking to them. And we can also use them in place of writing when we need to be concise or present something or take notes. And circling back to the obstacles that we face on our path to success, we have different types of logic structures to address these different obstacles, right? So making sure that you can clearly understand and communicate your problems, that you can work out effective solutions and know that those solutions are going to work, and that you're able to overcome any obstacles you might have to implementation so that you can achieve your desired reality, whatever that happens to be.